This Shabbat we talk about the instruction to build a sanctuary in the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God to take the implements and the materials that were required and to set them up in the exact measurements and proportion so that it would become a house of Hashem. And it would be a conduit of spiritual energy into this world. It would become physical matter that would conduct godliness and holiness into our physical world. It would bring together the physical and the spiritual, which was the intention of the giving of the Torah 2 weeks ago. And then we read from the prophets, from the book of Malachim, the book of Kings. Then we're reading about the temple of King Solomon in the city of Yerushalayim, and you cannot compare. Because when it comes to buildings, how could you compare a prefabricated sanctuary in the desert that was made to be taken down each time that they would journey, as compared to the magnificent edifice that King Solomon set up, a beautiful building in Yerushalayim? Obviously, it was a whole different level of structure and building that King Solomon had put together. But if we take a closer look, we actually see differences emerge between the sanctuary in the desert built by Moshe Rabbeinu, by Moses, and the temple built by King Solomon in Jerusalem. When it comes to the temple, there seems to be a bit of unease. Hashem, God, turns to King Solomon after he has created this magnificent palatial edifice that was the temple in Jerusalem, and he says, "This temple that you have built for me, if you will follow the precepts, and if you will follow exactly what God tells you to do, then I will bring my presence and I will find myself in your midst." It seems to be very different when it came to the sanctuary of Moses. Immediately the cloud descends, fills the place and the space of the sanctuary in the desert. There's no if you will, then I will. It seems to be immediate. There seems to be a bit of unease with God's commitment to bring his presence into the temple as compared to the immediacy of God's presence in the sanctuary in the desert. There were differences between the sanctuary of Moses and the temple of King Solomon. When it came to the sanctuary of Moses, we are told that people came forward with gifts in abundance. People gave so much that eventually, and probably the only time in history, Moshe Rabbeinu had to tell those contributing, "Die, there is enough, too much, stop giving, we have everything that is required." People gave with their hearts. The women gave of their talents and their strengths and abilities to weave the tapestries as was required. Everybody gave with their heart and soul and gave their all to make the sanctuary happen. By contrast, when it comes to the temple that King Solomon built, we talk about trade agreements. Between the Phoenicians and Israel, there were stone hewers, there were wood craftsmen that came in waves and droves to be able to perfect the artistry and the requirements of the temple. And the Jewish people, it says that they were taxed, and they were required to go through 2 months at home and 1 month's conscription, that they were forced to go up to Lebanon to assist in getting all the raw materials for the temple. The temple of King Solomon was done professionally. It was done through professionals, and it was done as a tax on the Jewish people that they had to report for duty. By Moshe Rabbeinu, by Moses, the Jewish people came forward with all their heart and soul. Uninhibited, unrestrained, they gave their all. And you cannot compare what emerges when we give of our heart and soul, even as we build much more beautiful structures and edifices. You cannot compare what is done with the heart and soul, the giving of the inner being of each individual. And we are told that the sanctuary that we built in the desert and the temple we built in Yerushalayim, "V'asuli migdash," you'll make for me a sanctuary, "V'shachanti b'tocham," and I will live and I will dwell in the midst of that sanctuary. We are all a sanctuary of Hashem. We are all able to conduct holiness in this world by fulfilling our mission and purpose in this world. We are all temples in miniature, sanctuaries in miniature. And we could set up our lives to act so professionally, to have the end result, the bottom line, by ensuring that everything that is required is in place, by having professional involvement, by paying for external duty and service, and that way we're able to fulfill everything that God told us to do. But the raw love that comes from each of us, when we fill our sanctuary, our lives, with a sense of love, purpose, commitment, loyalty, when it comes from within, even if what looks like the end result doesn't look as beautiful, but it comes from the right place of our heart, it is, in God's eyes, a much more secure sanctuary than even the temple that was built in Jerusalem. May Hashem give us the ability to live our lives with that loyalty and that sense of commitment that is innate, that comes from within, that is giving of heart and soul, because that secures relationship with Hashem. And please God, Hashem fills our lives with the presence of God and with the purpose of this world being fulfilled as we turn this very difficult world into being the garden of Hashem as He intended it to be. Have a beautiful Shabbos.